Well, welcome everyone. We are really pleased to have you join us for today's webinar, Show Your Employees Some Love, 50 Easy to Implement Ideas for Building Employee Engagement. I'm Jennifer Gladstone, Editor-in-Chief of EBI's Screening News Network. Employment Background Investigations is pleased to present today's program with our wonderful partner, Catherine Mattis, President of Civility Partners. Civility Partners is a consulting and training firm whose clients include the U.S. military, universities, hospitals, government agencies, nonprofits, and businesses of all sizes. Catherine is also the author of Back Off, Your Kick-Ass Guide to Ending Bullying at Work. Today, Catherine's going to tell us how to create a formal strategic plan for employee engagement. When we're done, you'll be able to immediately implement many of our 50 solutions. You will have also earned yourself some continuing ed credits. We'll give you those codes for both SHRM and HRCI at the end of the presentation. Now, if you have a question, feel free to submit it, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. And don't worry about trying to keep up with all that note-taking. After the webinar, you will receive an email with the entire slide deck as well as the recording of the entire presentation. So sit back, relax, and get ready to get those employees engaged. And now, Catherine, I turn the program over to you.
Thanks so much. I love your introduction. Thank you. So just to kind of tell you a little bit more about myself and how I came to be interested in the topic of employee engagement, I'm actually a subject matter expert on the topic of workplace bullying. And in being an expert in workplace bullying, I have to be an expert in the opposite of workplace bullying, which is a positive, thriving, happy, and healthy work environment. So that's what I do with clients. I work with clients who have a bullying problem, and we work to adjust the culture and create a better, positive, thriving culture. So in doing that, of course, I've done a lot of exploration on the topic of employee engagement, creating happiness at work. And one thing I noticed as I was doing research on employee engagement is that there isn't really anything new in terms of models. So there's 100 different models out there about employee engagement. They all say relatively the same thing. There's really 7 facets of employee engagement that everybody talks about. And so I'm going to go through those 7 facets. But one thing that's missing, I feel, in the employee engagement conversation is just those real tangible action items. Engagement feels a little intangible or abstract. And so my goal today is to literally give you 50 ideas, things that you could do right after the webinar is over that can start to help you build that engagement there at your workplace. So I've written a book called Back Off, as Jennifer mentioned. I also recently released a second book called Seeking Civility, How Leaders, Managers, and HR Can Create a Workplace Free of Bullying. And as Jennifer also mentioned, I've been in the news quite a bit, had the honor of being cited in quite a lot of different places, as well as I've had a huge array of clients. So where there's people, there's room for bullying, and I can help any organization of any size. So we're going to go over engagement first. We're just going to define it so that we're all on the same page, and then from there we'll jump right into ideas for creating engagement. So what is employee engagement? Well, according to Gallup, who does an employee engagement worldwide survey every year, they define employee engagement as being involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to work and the workplace. And I've added this statement, a profound connection. So Gallup is saying that your employees are involved, they're there, they're present, they're enthusiastic, and they're committed to the work that they do on a day-to-day basis, and they're committed to the workplace as a whole. And in my mind, that means that your employees really feel a profound connection to their team, their work, their job, their clients. And so I wonder how many of you could say that your employees really have a profound connection with your work and your workplace. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to see where we're at. So we're going to open up a poll for you so that we can get an idea of what the engagement looks like here today with our audience. So Jennifer, I'll let you take that away.
All right, Catherine, so here are the questions, folks. Which metaphor best describes your employees' engagement level? They mountain bike the heck out of their workday, blood, sweat, tears, and laughter all the way. They go to spin class regularly. It's hard sometimes, and they do it, but they're happy to go home when the class is over. And finally, they don't exercise, ever. So pick your answer, and as soon as we get some responses, Catherine will put those up on the screen. See,
Perfect.
we have A lot in the middle, Catherine. We've got about 63, 64% say they go to that spin class, but only about 7% are mountain biking.
Oh, okay. All
And
right.
30% say they don't exercise at all.
Okay. So
What does that tell us?
30% are actively disengaged, and you said what was the middle number? Are
The middle was the spin class. We've got about 63%. So you've got folks saying that they're putting in the effort, but it's not as high as those mountain bikers.
all right. Okay. So we did that because I wanted to compare us, our audience today, with Gallup's poll. So what Gallup finds year after year after year is that 32% of employees are actively engaged, 51% are disengaged, and 18% are actively disengaged. It looks like we're not back onto the slides, Jennifer. I don't know if you can
Yeah,
click
Catherine,
either.
you need to go back to one of your slides as we came out of that poll. I think we lost you there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we've got a title slide here, so I know you want to make sure you get back to where you started.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen here. Sorry, folks, little technical difficulties. Let's try this again. There we go.
There we
There.
go. Thanks a
Okay,
lot.
perfect. Sorry about that. Okay. So according to Gallup's poll, this is what they find pretty consistently. So 32% of employees around the world are actively engaged or they're mountain biking the heck out of their workday. And then 51% of employees are disengaged. And that means that they're there, they're going to spin class, they do the work, they do what's required of them. They probably perform pretty well, but they're not necessarily feeling that profound connection that we're trying to get to. And then finally, 18% of employees are actively disengaged, which means that they're at work, but they really could care less about the work environment. And so we obviously really want to get away from actively disengaged. We at least want our employees to be there and care, but ultimately, if we can get employees who have this profound connection to the work and the workplace, then they're going to produce top quality results because they care about that top quality result. And that means your clients are going to have a better experience. And of course, that all affects the bottom line. So here's that Gallup poll, just so you can kind of see the consistency there, that those numbers show up pretty much every year. So what I like to say is that engagement is really about mind, body, and soul. So when your employees are engaged, that means they give their mind over every day. Now, they're not going to do it 100% of the day, all day, every day, 100% of the time. That's a lot to ask. But that when they are there, they really are putting forth their best effort. They care a lot about the results of their work. And they do give over their mind as often as they possibly can. Also, employees are giving over their body. They're doing the physical work that's required, whether that means sitting at a desk, as part of their job, or doing, the manual labor, or whatever it is that your employees are doing, that they're sort of giving over their body to the workplace when they're at work. And then ultimately their soul. I have my own business. I'm obviously very passionate about workplace bullying. I've been studying and publishing on that topic since 2008. I can absolutely say that I give over my soul to my workplace every single day, but I'm the owner. It's a topic I'm passionate about. And you want your employees to do that as well, as much as you can possibly get them to do. So the more your employees are giving over their mind, body, and soul, the more engaged we can say they are. Now, before I jump into my tips here, I wanted to give you kind of this little caveat. So as a workplace bullying expert, I get a ton of calls from HR professionals who have a bullying problem in their workplace. They see it happening, they hear complaints about it, they know it's an issue. And when they talk to their CEO about workplace bullying, often the CEO feels like, well, everybody's still meeting their goals. We're still getting our bottom line results. I don't think it's that big of a problem. And HR is then left in this limbo where they want to fix this problem. They can see it's harming the workplace and engagement and performance and all of those things, but they're left without permission from the CEO to solve the problem of bullying. And so over time, I've realized that I've sort of become this HR ninja. I have learned how to help HR deliver results, change the work environment without necessarily getting the CEO's approval. And I'm not saying you're unethical, you're going around the CEO in an unethical way. But what I'm trying to get at is that my tips today, 99% of them are things that you can implement at the very least in your own team, and even more, you could implement them in your entire workplace without necessarily having the CEO's stamp of approval. So, culture change is the solution to workplace bullying, and engagement is about culture. So what I'm talking today about is culture change, but the tips I'm going to give you are small enough that you don't necessarily need the CEO's approval, but big enough that they will have an impact for your employees. So consider yourselves an HR ninja as well as you're implementing these tips. So no matter what article you read about engagement, no matter what book you read about engagement, you'll always find these 7 factors, that these are the 7 facets that go into employee engagement. No matter what model you're looking at, you always see these things. So I'm going to take you through these 7 facets, and as I do that, offer up tips within each facet that you can implement, again, right away as soon as we get off the webinar. So let's go ahead and start off with employees feeling valued. So employees feeling valued is all about helping employees understand that their role is important to the organization's mission, that they should feel valued to their contribution to that mission, that they're heard when they talk, when they have an idea, when they share information, that people hear them and take it in and it's valued information, that employees feel appreciated for the things that they do. So all of this stuff falls under this first facet of feeling valued. Now, I want to share a story with you about this unfolding or not unfolding, as the case may be. So way back when, long ago, when I first got into human resources, I worked for a financial services company, and this was before electronic records. So we had giant wall full of files that looked kind of like this, and it was just lots and lots and lots of files. And when I first started at this company, we had 9 employees. We had 3 customer service representatives, nothing too major. The customer service reps could easily file and sort of manage the paperwork that came along with working with customers. But over time, we grew quite a bit, and we went up to 35 employees. We had about 15 customer service representatives who were taking a whole lot of calls, and they therefore had no more time to manage their own paperwork and file things. So what we did was hire some file clerks. They were high school students. They came in after work, they came in after school for the last few hours of the day and would file our paperwork. And we had this table back there along the files, and customer service reps would write the file number on the paperwork they dealt with the client, and then they'd stick this paper in a file, or I'm sorry, in a pile, and the file clerks would come along, one by one. They'd pull a stack of papers from this pile of papers, find the file, stick it in, and then it was just a repetitive, mundane, standard file clerk job that they were doing. Well, because I was young and naive, I didn't realize that making a connection to the mission was important for a file clerk. In my mind, perhaps sort of snooty, I was thinking, they're just file clerks. They're just high school students. This is just their job. It's pretty simple. They don't need a whole lot of information about what we do. Boy, was I wrong. What we discovered after a few weeks of having these file clerks work for us is that things were going missing. So clients would call in and they'd say, I faxed something over. I need to talk to you about it. And the customer service rep would go to find this document so that they could talk to the client about it, and it would be missing. It was nowhere to be found. So now customers are obviously upset. They'd sent over some financial information and we'd lost it. Well, we discovered that one of the file clerks was taking giant chunks of paper and just shoving them into random files. So in an effort to reduce her workload, because her job was pretty mundane, in an effort to reduce that pile, she was just taking a bunch of files and sticking them in a file and sort of hiding all of these papers. And so now we had all of this paperwork that was somewhere in a file, somewhere on this giant wall of files. And what I realized was this was my fault. I never explained to the file clerks why filing paper in the right file was important. And So they didn't know. She had no idea what the repercussions of that would be. And so I had to take responsibility for this because it was up to me to have had that conversation with the file clerks. And it was really because I didn't understand how important it was. But this was a real slap in the face that filing actually filing actually was part of customer service because customer service really relied on the file clerks to be accurate in the way that they filed. So what we did was moved the file clerks into the customer service department. Now they were going to be managed by the customer service manager, and they were all going to make sure that they were on the same page about filing. So that's an example of what happens when employees don't understand how their work is part of the big picture. So let me go ahead and give you some tips on how to help employees feel valued. First off, look employees in the eye and say thank you every now and again. A lot of times we get so busy, we just kind of do things and we don't really put that out there. So stop your employees in the hallway every now and again and just look them in the eye and say, you know what, I wanted to say thank you to you for something that you did. Next up, start your staff meetings off with thank yous. Now, I hear a lot when I give this tip, people say, well, I'm the supervisor. I always stand up in front of the meeting and say thank you to my staff as the supervisor or the manager. I recommend that instead you put it out to the group. So start your staff meeting off by saying, I would like to open the floor for thank yous. Does anybody want to say thank you to anybody else? And let them say thank you rather than you say thank you. Let them thank each other. And what will happen is people will start to thank each other for little things that may or may not be all that big of a deal, but people start to realize that they do appreciate each other. It really changes the tone of the meeting, and it just makes a big difference. So people might even just say thank you for, thanks to John because he's funny and he smiles and I appreciate his personality. Or thank you to Susan. She brought in food last week for her birthday and we all got to eat some of it. So thank you for doing that. There'll be little things, but they'll make a world of difference. Another idea is to cover a wall with paper and then let employees graffiti success on the paper. So you can buy butcher paper, or you could take pieces of scratch paper that you use for printing and just kind of tape it all to the wall and let people graffiti the wall and let people graffiti different successes. People can say thank you to each other. They can say, hey, we did it. We met this goal. Whatever it is, people can have the opportunity to sort of advertise their successes. Something else you could do to help your employees feel valued is take on a project or task that you know one of your employees despises. So if your employee does something really amazing, a reward that doesn't cost any money is for you to say, you know what, I know you really hate doing X, and I'm going to take that on for you today, and I'm going to do that job for you because I know you hate it, and I want you to know that I recognize that you do it anyway, and I appreciate that. So there's another way to say thank you. One other way to help employees feel valued is to actually listen when employees have ideas. So actually at that organization where I worked, where we had this file clerk issue, the president really emulated this, and I still remember him very clearly and still am very appreciative of him all these years later. I could go into his office and say, hey, I have an idea. And he would turn around and he would give me his full attention and he would say, all right, what is it? And he would talk through it with you. He would ask questions. He clearly was really listening to me as I shared my ideas. And then he would say, yes, that sounds great, go do it. Or he'd say, I need more information. Can you go answer these questions for me and we'll talk about it again? Or he'd say, you know what, we cannot do that idea, but the best part about that was he would say, here's why. So he would say, we can't do that, but let me explain why we can't do it. So I never felt like I was being dismissed. Another great way to show employees they're valued. Encouraging autonomy. So if you're an HR professional, share with your managers that autonomy is important. Nobody likes to be micromanaged, so that's a simple one. And ensuring that your onboarding program includes the company history is another way to help employees feel valued. So if employees understand where they fit in the line of things and what's happened before they got there and what's expected to happen now that they're there, employees will realize that they are valued and that they do play a part in a bigger thing that's bigger than them and that they're important to that thing. So those are my first 7 ideas. Next up, let's talk about the work itself and how to help employees get engagement through the work that they're doing. So work is all about giving employees autonomy, letting them feel flexible, that they feel satisfied with their job tasks, that they feel the opportunity to grow and be challenged with their work tasks, and then also knowing that their work is connected to something bigger than them. So there that is again. So let me share another story with you. I once did a training on workplace bullying for an organization that was set up by the city council. So this was a city government agency, and their job was to kill mosquitoes. So at this organization, the city itself had a mosquito problem, and so the city had to set up this organization that was there to control the mosquito problems. Otherwise, things like West Nile virus happen. Having malaria, having a lot of mosquitoes is not a good thing for a community. So I did this training, and on the break, I was just kind of chit-chatting with some of the employees about different things, and I was sitting at a table, and I turned to this woman next to me, and I said, so tell me more about what you do here. I know you kill mosquitoes, and I've looked at your website, and I had those conversations, but I want to hear more from you. Tell me more what you do. And she says, we kill mosquitoes. You know the answer. There isn't anything else to say. And the guy on the other side of me interjects and he says, is that all you think we're doing here? Killing mosquitoes? We are saving this community from West Nile virus. That's what we do here. And he was just, his eyes were so big and he was just so excited to share this with me. And I love that story because it's a real slap in the face example of what employee engagement looks like versus not. This one woman, she felt like, well, we just kill mosquitoes. That's all we do. Not a big deal. It's not important. She probably wasn't that engaged. Versus the guy on the other side of me, he's really excited about what he does and he literally feels like he's saving the community from a disease. And that's how he views his job, that he's saving the community from something. And so how do you get your employees to have that kind of reaction that this gentleman had on the other side of me? So here are some more ideas. Some things you can do under this facet of work. On Fridays, require the lights to be turned off by 5 p.m. so that people know you do not want them working late. You respect them as a person and you want them to go home by 5. You could also during the week have dinner delivered for anyone who's working late. That might be something you could do to let them know you appreciate them. You could reward your employees with a half day off. So if you don't have to give employees money to reward them, you can just give them some time off, even just a couple hours. They can leave early. We've all got things we can do outside of our work day, and we'd all appreciate a little bit of time to go and do that. A real important one is to discuss often how employees contribute to the mission, the goals, and the bottom line. So going back to this story with these two people, this man understood that the mission of the organization was to solve West Nile virus or prevent it from happening in his own community. And he really connected to that mission. And so to him, his work was really important. The woman on the other side, for whatever reason, she didn't see her job as connecting to this larger mission. She didn't see the impact of her job. And so they had a real difference of opinion about what they were there doing every day. So if you can, it's easy for us to get lost in what we're doing. We get lost in our job tasks and we forget about the bigger picture and we forget about our clients. So it's up to you and it's up to your managers to keep that conversation going and to constantly remind people, here's how you connect to what we're trying to do here. Here's the impact that you have. Talk about client success and the impact for that client often. So if you can start your staff meetings off with stories from clients, here was a client, XYZ happened, here was the impact for that client, and we did that for that client. We're the ones who had that impact for that client. How great are we? That's a great way to start off your staff meetings. You could also collect stories from clients through video. Ask clients to create a video of their story. Everybody's got a cell phone. It doesn't have to be a professional video, but ask clients to create little testimonials for you so that you can show them to your employees. That's another great way to help keep that connection going. You could offer the opportunity to work from home sometimes. So again, just like the half day off, it might be nice for employees just to be able to work from home and not have to come in. And actually, last week, my husband, personal story, he had kind of a headache, didn't necessarily want to go into work, but he felt okay to work. The process of getting ready and going felt like a lot to him. So he called his boss and said, I want to work today. I need to do it from home if that's all right. Otherwise, I got to take a sick day, if it's not okay for me to work from home. And the boss said, sure, that's fine, you can work from home. And then he's been talking about it ever since, and he keeps kind of saying, I got so much done, and it felt good that she trusted me to be at home. So for him, he's got a little more engagement as a result of that experience last week. You could also create stretch goals for your employees every 90 days. So remember that part of this facet of work is that employees feel the opportunity to grow and develop. And so one way to help them do that is through 90-day stretch goals. So asking your managers to meet with their employees every 90 days, come up with some sort of stretch goal, and then have them go and do it. And the manager would, of course, be there to help that employee achieve that stretch goal. And once the stretch goal is achieved, how awesome do people feel that they were able to stretch themselves and they were able to achieve something that was a little bit out of their realm? And that just keeps people attached to their work and keeps things exciting for them. All right, so next up on our 7 facets is the team. So employees have to feel connected to their team. Employees have to feel that there is teamwork. They have to trust each other. They have to feel like they get positive feedback or constructive feedback that's helpful for them. They have to feel like there's good communication, and they have to feel like they are able to make good decisions as a group. So these are the kinds of things that fall under this idea of team. If an employee feels connected to their team because of these things that are happening, then of course they're going to be more engaged. So just to give an example of that, you've probably heard of the Hawthorne studies. They're famous studies, and what happened was some researchers wanted to understand the work environment. They wanted to understand how the work environment affected employee productivity. And by work environment, what they meant was there an optimal level of lighting? Was there an optimal a temperature? So if there's a certain kind of light and a certain kind of temperature in the room, do people perform better? And that's what they were looking at. And so these researchers went into the Hawthorne plant, which is why they're called the Hawthorne studies, and they did some interviews, and the interviews all showed that people didn't necessarily care about lighting or the temperature in the room. What they cared about was their relationships. So in these interviews, that's what people wanted to talk about. The interviewers weren't necessarily asking questions about management relationships or team relationships. They were asking questions about the work environment, and people kept kind of going back to the people. And so this is a famous study because it was a real sort of light went on that, hey, people care about their team a lot more than they care about what the lights are, what the temperature in the room is. So here are some tips for creating engagement through this facet of team. Number 1, train everyone on giving feedback and train managers on coaching. So one thing I absolutely see in all of my clients who have a workplace bullying problem, which is the opposite of employee engagement, one thing I see all the time is that the reason this is happening is managers do not know how to give feedback, and they don't know how to coach their employees. So the reason bullying happens is the manager never stepped in. Nobody ever told that person you can't act that way, and nobody ever tried to help that person get better in the way that they behave. So I see that when there's negative work environment, a big part of that negative work environment is the fact that managers don't know how to solve that problem. And so managers absolutely need training on how to give feedback to their employees and how to coach their employees. And actually everyone in the organization should have some training on how to give feedback. Even if it's employee to employee, we're giving feedback to each other, and not everyone knows how to do that well. So absolutely, this is really important. Another idea under this facet is to schedule time to give positive feedback. So what I recommend you do is go in your calendar, and every Friday or every other Friday, whatever suits you, give yourself some time to give positive feedback. If you don't schedule it in your calendar, you may forget to do it. So, again, we just get caught up in our day and we go and we work and we forget sometimes that we need to say thank you, and we forget to give the praise. So schedule 15 minutes in your calendar every other Friday or every Friday to just make sure that you take the time to take a step back, write someone a thank you note, send out an email, go over to someone's desk. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but just having it in your calendar will ensure that you're kind of always thinking about it and always doing it. Another idea for under this facet of team is work in projects together and do them in and outside of work. So maybe you can all go do a Habitat for Humanity Day and build a home for someone in your community. Or maybe you can develop some projects inside the workplace. And you see this all the time with things like, everybody wears a Fitbit and there's a contest for losing weight or getting fit. These are projects that ultimately do help with the engagement because it gets people on the same page and working together and supporting each other on something. Here's another idea. This is one of my favorites. Have a show and tell meeting. So you remember show and tell from, first grade and third grade, where you'd bring something into class and everybody would bring something in, and one by one you'd stand up in front of the room and you'd say, this is my doll, my grandma gave it to me, or here's a little trinket I brought back from my family vacation to Disneyland, and everybody would get up and just sort of share something about themselves. Well, you could do that at work too, have a show and tell meeting. So you could kind of emulate what we did when we were kids and actually ask people to bring in something from their own personal life to share. That might be a fun way to do it. Or you could ask them to show and tell about something they're doing at work. So your pick, or maybe the employees can pick and you can let them decide. But maybe if the marketing team's working on some cool project, that something the company's never done before, something innovative, the marketing team can stand up and sort of show and tell this project they're working on. Or again, people can kind of do something personal. It might be kind of fun too. Some other ideas: do something crazy with your onboarding. So a lot of companies do orientation. You introduce people around the office. You have them fill out paperwork. They maybe do some online training. You give them some time to flip through your corporate policy handbook. All that stuff is orientation. Onboarding is the process of bringing people into your culture. And so you have to think about what's our culture and how do we get people involved in that. So some ideas, what I mean by crazy, I'll start with the craziest idea. I was reading that a startup tech firm, what they do with their onboarding is at the end of the first week, this new employee is brought into the cafeteria. They pop some champagne for everyone, and then they have this kind of king's chair. The new employee sits in that chair, and the entire organization does a little choreographed dance for their new employee while the new employee sits there and drinks champagne. So that's a little crazy. You might be thinking, there's no way we're going to do a choreographed dance for our new person. Fine, it doesn't have to be quite that crazy. But I love that story because what it's saying is we're celebrating you. And a lot of times when new hires come on board, they're feel like they're a burden. Nobody has time to ask or to answer their questions. They're assigned to someone to train them, and that person's kind of like, I have to train you. I've got so much work to do. You should be celebrating your new hires. They are an exciting addition to your organization, and so celebrate them. Something less crazy you could do with your onboarding is create a little survival kit for your new hire. So give them a little survival kit, some earbuds, a bar of chocolate, a, a, a gift card to the restaurant around the corner that everyone always eats at. Just kind of create a little survival kit or a little welcome basket for them with things related to your workplace. So that's an idea that's a lot less crazy. Another idea for this is getting to know your employees. Just ask questions. So this one's easy, certainly doesn't require your CEO's approval. Just spending some time to get to know your employees, asking them questions. And that's kind of what the show and tell meeting is about too. Just making sure that everybody is taking the time to get to know each other. The more people are sort of friends, the more production they're going to offer and the better quality work, because they're going to feel that social pressure from their sort of friends, I say with air quotes. Okay, next up is the environment itself. So the environment certainly creates engagement as well. And what we're referring to with the environment is things like your culture in your organization, the kind of work or the pace of the work. So is everything super tight? You're always running on crazy deadlines. You're gonna have to work with that in building engagement. Do people take pride in the company? And our workspace, is certainly important too. So if you have taupe walls and there aren't very exciting things on the wall, honestly, that affects engagement a little bit, because people maybe don't feel excited because the work environment isn't that exciting. So something to think about. So just to give you an example of this, I am a course author for lynda.com, Lynda.com. You've probably heard of it. Lynda.com has a ton of online courses, and being one of their authors is really fun. I love going to visit lynda.com. And so this is a picture of me with some of my team when I went there to film one of my courses. I love going there because you can tell that everybody loves to work there. So when you walk down the halls at lynda.com, everybody knows each other. They ask questions about each other. They know a lot about each other. So you'll hear people asking questions about kind of personal things like, hey, how's your kids' softball team? Or, hey, I heard you went skiing. How was that? Was that fun? So they clearly all enjoy each other. They're all pretty good friends. And another fun thing is Lynda actually serves food all day in the cafeteria. And so they have breakfast, lunch, and a late dinner, a dinner, and they also have snacks throughout the day, and there's always coffee flowing and juice, and there's always snacks there. And the way the cafeteria is set up is nobody can sit by themselves. Every table in the cafeteria are giant rounds of 12 or so. And so during lunchtime, when we break for lunch, when I'm doing these courses, we go and sit down and we sit at this table, and I get to talk to other people who work at Lynda, and they're always interested to hear, what course are you doing, what's your background, and they like to share with you what they're up to. And I always get to have just these really great friendly conversations at lunch at Lynda. Now, certainly offering food to your entire workforce, that requires the CEO's approval. You can't do that. But let me give you some other ideas of simple things that you can do that may not necessarily cost so much of a budget. So idea number one is to redecorate. Now, I'm not suggesting that you tear down all the walls, put in a $4 million, new office space. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is what are some small things you can do to redecorate your office to make it more exciting? So there's a reason hospital walls are painted light yellow or light blue. It's because those light pastel colors are very calming. And so color on the wall does matter, and so you want to think about the colors on your wall. So again, if you have taupe walls, no offense, but people aren't excited about that. So at the very least, can you buy some cheap posters that are interesting and exciting to sort of get people geared up to be excited when they come to work? I worked for an organization, it was a startup tech firm, and we had bright orange wall, one long bright orange wall. The rest of the walls were taupe, but that one bright orange wall definitely keeps you on your toes all day because it's bright orange, and actually had whiteboards all the way down it, so you could go to any spot in the office at this whiteboard and kind of have a meeting around the whiteboard, but it was up on a wall that the whole office could see. So what are some small things you can do? Other ideas, these days, kind of that co-working space or a space for people to feel comfortable to work away from their desk, that's a big thing. Go to Target, buy some $30 bean bags and throw them in a corner somewhere so that people can sit on a bean bag with their laptop and get some work done. So redecorating doesn't have to be a huge $50 million change. I'm just suggesting that you take a look around your office and ask yourself, is it exciting in here? And if it's not, you might want to do some things to help liven it up. Some other ideas, you could offer gift certificates to a coffee house or a restaurant that's down the street or around the corner or in the lobby of your office building, just to get people out of the office. So you could sort of put it out there, hey, I'm giving you these gift certificates. It's meant for work time, so you're free to have a meeting for work downstairs in the coffee house. And here's a gift certificate to do that. But it's just another way to sort of switch up the work environment and give people something a little more interesting to look at other than their own office walls. Great opportunities for people to collide, as they say. So this means that perhaps your kitchen, for example, could be a place where people collide. And by collide, we mean that people just sort of spontaneously start to work together and have conversations about the workplace and what they're doing. And the more opportunities you can create for people to collide and have those conversations, the more innovative people will be. So yes, we might be innovative while we're sitting at our desk, or yes, we might be innovative in a staff meeting at the same table that we sit at every time we have a staff meeting. But we might be innovative if we get to have lunch with a random coworker that we never really interact with in the kitchen. And the kitchen's exciting to be in, and so people like to go there. So that's what collide means. Give people the opportunity to sort of run into each other and have some spontaneous conversations. These days, I'm in San Diego. I don't know about your areas where you all are, but in San Diego, craft beer is a big thing. So you hear, at least in San Diego, of a lot of kitchens that are offering beer in the refrigerator, and there's a rule you can't start drinking that beer until after 4 p.m. But, then people go to the cafeteria or your kitchen at 4. There's other people there. They might have a beer with each other, and some great ideas may come out of that. So that's an idea. Visit a local best place to work winner in your area. So your business journal or your SHRM chapter, somebody in your area probably does a best place to work award, and I would recommend seeking those people out, calling them up, asking if you can go to their office and visit with them, and I'm sure they'll share with you some ideas on how to build employee engagement and things they're doing. Another idea, ask employees to create a 20-second video about your core values, and then you can string those videos together and have a viewing party. So what happens is just send out an email, ask people to pull out their cell phone, create a video, ask them to send it back to you, and then YouTube provides the opportunity to string videos together. So this is free. You don't have to have a professional video done. It's just people talking about it on their cell phones. String the videos together on YouTube, hold a viewing party, serve popcorn, do it on a Friday at 4 p.m. and people can kind of come together and you can hear what everybody's saying around your core values. Another idea is to hold open discussions about positive workplaces. So for example, I have a job aid around how to have a conversation about professionalism that you could give to your managers and ask your managers to sort of facilitate this conversation about professionalism and what that means in your workplace. You could ask managers to talk about your core values. So every month, choose a core value and ask your managers that during one of their staff meetings, they sort of talk about that value and what it means. So, there's a lot of topics that fall under the umbrella of a positive workplace: communication, conflict management, resilience, customer service, all of these things. It's about keeping the conversation going about what these positive workplace behaviors look like so that everybody can be on the same page. Now, the last two ideas in this section do absolutely require your CEO's approval. One is that you may need to revamp your core values. So if you're an organization that feels like you do have a bit of a negative work environment, that means that people aren't living your core values. if they were, you wouldn't have a negative work environment. So it might be time to revamp your core values. And I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a minute. A lot of times I see one of the problems with organizations I work with that have bullying is that A, everybody's ignoring the core values, and B, the core values were created 10 years ago at a executive retreat somewhere in the wilderness led by some consultant that nobody knows, and they come back from that retreat with core values, and the core values are boring. So they're words like integrity, trustworthy, diversity and inclusion, customer service. So that's normally how core values are created. How in the world are your employees going to feel connected to those core values if they're boring? They were created 10 years ago with some consultant that nobody knows their name. That doesn't make sense that people would live those core values. They're not attached to those core values. So it might be time to revisit your core values and figure out, how can we make our core values more exciting? How can we make sure they suit our employees now? Now, I have a whole exercise that you can run with your employees to create new core values. If you're interested in that, I can email that to you, and you'll have my email information at the end. But just consider, do people really live our core values? Are they exciting? Do people care about them? And so you may need to revamp them. And if you do that, you'd probably want a culture committee to help you do that, because now we're talking about culture change. So these are more big picture ideas that absolutely would require your CEO, of course. Okay, so moving on to the next facet, leadership. Leadership creates employee engagement. So leadership is about trusting the leaders. It's about feeling like leaders share what they know about the organization, that they're not keeping secrets. It's about feeling supported and having the tools they need to do their job. So nothing's more frustrating than being assigned a task and realizing you don't have all of the tools you need to complete that task. So we got to make sure that's not happening. So just to give you some tips in this facet, one is to apologize when you make a mistake. So this doesn't require your CEO's approval. If you make a mistake, people will trust you and respect you more if you apologize for that mistake. So that's a simple tip that can certainly help you build engagement. You could offer mentor-protege programs. So if you have newer employees or younger employees or junior employees who have career goals in mind, certainly pairing them up with someone in the organization who's achieved those career goals would be a great way for people to feel like that the organization values them, and also that they're getting, to grow and learn from this person who's sort of already gone down the path that they want to go down. One other side bonus to this is, if there is ever a time where leadership is seeming to be untrustworthy, or something's happening in the kind of the gossip around the office is that we can't trust leaders. If you have a mentor-protege program, you're going to have employees who do trust the leaders because they have a mentor in one of those leaders. And so the gossip might be, we don't trust leaders, and you'll have these proteges who will say, well, wait, my mentor is John, and I really trust John. I don't think, what we're talking about is really happening, or whatever. So you sort of have champions for your leadership team that are down there with the employees. One other way to build trust with leadership is to have an employee council who gets to meet with the executive team maybe once a month. So it's sort of like student council in high school. They get to meet with the principal every so often to share their ideas for what students need. And same kind of a thing, that you have a group of employees who come together, and they're from different parts of the organization, and they represent the employees in their own departments, and that they get to meet with the executive team and talk to the executive team about their concerns or questions or whatever it is. Another way to really communicate is to blog about internal business issues, so that everybody knows what's going on. Part of building trust is really communicating about things. I'll give you an example of this. There's a credit union that was going through a merger, which obviously creates a lot of, people are uncomfortable during a merger. And there's a lot of gossip that, well, I heard that the marketing department's getting canned because this other company already has a marketing department, or I heard that this person's going to get fired. So there's all of that kind of gossip. So what this CEO of one of the credit unions did was he said, if you send an email to gossip at, creditunion.org, um, I will respond. And so people could send their rumors that they heard into this email address, and then once a week the CEO would send a response out to the rumor. So he'd say, I got an email that this was a rumor, here's the answer to that. And of course sometimes he would say, I can't answer that right now, but I will have an answer for you. But at the very least, he was doing his best to answer people's questions and concerns, and of course people feel more trusting. Another idea is to ask employees what they need to do their job more effectively. So you may just want to send out an email that says, I just want to make sure you have what you need. Are there things you need that would help you be better at your job? And if we can, we'll try to give those things to you. So, again, nothing's more frustrating than being given an assignment that you can't complete. Communicating often about everything is an important tip, and including leadership and onboarding much more than you probably already are. So you probably have a lunch set up with your new hires where they get to maybe have lunch with your CEO or something like that. But that's not enough. In order for your new hires to feel connected and trusting of the leaders, they need to be around a lot more. So figure out ways to add leadership participation to your onboarding more than you already are. And then finally, train managers and supervisors how to do performance management. So again, the biggest consistency I see through all of my clients who have a workplace bullying problem is that performance management isn't that great in that organization. It's not working very well. If it was working, there wouldn't be bullying. So the big problem is that a lot of times people are promoted to manager or supervisor, and they're never taught how to do performance management. They're given the annual evaluation form and told to fill that out. Well, that's not training. It doesn't mean they're doing it well. They're going to follow the examples from the leaders that they've had in the past. So really get clear on how performance management systems can increase performance and build trust, and then train your managers and supervisors on how to do that. All right, next facet is growth. Employees have to feel like they have the opportunity to grow. So they have to feel like they can advance, they get the opportunity to learn, that they get to be innovative, again, stretch goals, that they get to be coached or mentored, that they have, your employees have professional goals and they want to feel like they're given the opportunity to achieve those goals over time. So let me give you an example of this. I live in San Diego, as I mentioned, and the San Diego airport actually wins a lot of awards and is well known in San Diego for being a great place to work. And so I got to meet with the director of culture there a couple years ago, and one of the things that we talked about was the fact that the airport is finite. It's not growing anymore. It's in a plot of land downtown. There's nothing else. It's not growing anymore. So he said, we have X number of employees, and that's the number of employees we have. So unless somebody leaves, you're never going to get to go up. And we only need X number of marketing people, and we only need X number of, accounting people, and we only need X number of OD people. And so, he just talked about when we hire people in, we really communicate that with them. We really talk about the fact that you're not necessarily going to go up unless the director of organizational development who's been here for 30 years decides to leave tomorrow. You're not going to get to take over that position. And so they're really clear on that. However, what they do instead is cross-train, and so instead of getting to move up, you get to move sideways. And so they always promote from within or look from within when a position does open up. So you might get hired in doing marketing, and then if you want, you can maybe get moved over to the HR department if a position opens up. And so they teach people to kind of go laterally if people are interested in that. And what he said is we have a real clear agreement with our employees that we're going to suck everything you know about the world, we're going to take that from you, and we're going to want you to really give that over to the airport. And in return, we're going to give you every opportunity we possibly can to help you learn. So because you won't get promoted, but you'll get to learn a whole heck of a lot. And then when you're ready to leave, which we know you will because there's no promotion opportunities, then you go back out into San Diego's community with all this extra information that you wouldn't have had at another job. And so, it's just this real open conversation about you're probably not going to be here for 20 years. Only a few people stay that long. But when you do leave, when you decide it's time to move on, you'll have a ton of information that you wouldn't have gotten at another position. So some ideas, things that you can do under growth that don't cost a lot of money. You could create a lunch and learn schedule for all of your departments. This is one of my favorite ideas too. So for example, you could ask the customer service department to do a training about internal customer service. You could ask the accounting department to do a training on, I don't know, managing personal finances and things around numbers. You could ask the marketing department about personal branding or LinkedIn or something. So each department could kind of give a training to the rest of the company, and you can do it over a lunch and learn. And the idea isn't necessarily that these departments are going to deliver the best training ever, because training is not normally part of their job, but it's a chance for them to share things they know and to learn from each other as they create the training, and also to share some knowledge with your employees. You could create a book club. Tons and tons of books out there about all sorts of topics related to business and your industry. So you could ask the whole organization to read a book, or even just certain departments read a book, and then we'll reconvene and talk about it and figure out what action items we can implement as a result of reading that book. You could partner with a nonprofit. So, as a group, you could all go out and do some sort of nonprofit work, but you could also find opportunities for people to learn and grow professionally at the nonprofit. So, for example, I was the president of the Association for Talent Development San Diego chapter. I had never really managed a budget that large before, and so I got to learn something new that certainly applies to my own personal professional life, and that was through volunteering. So that's an idea as a way to give people opportunities to grow. Absolutely, you've got to give people the opportunity to go to trainings, join their own professional associations. Absolutely a way to ensure that they're staying at the top of their craft. You could offer budget for personal courses around things. So maybe people can go to a community college and learn Spanish if that's what they've always wanted to do, or they could learn to scuba dive and you pay for that. So giving people the opportunity to grow personally is also a great way to help employees feel like they're growing. Free webinars are everywhere. You can certainly advertise free webinars. One other idea is to organize matrix teams. So a matrix team is a group of people made up of one person from each department, and they come together to solve each other's problems, sort of like a mastermind group within your organization. So you get one person from accounting, one person from customer service, one person from marketing, one person from HR, one person from each department. They come together once a month, and they're able to talk and share ideas and solve each other's problems. Great way for everyone in the mastermind group or matrix team to learn about what everybody else in the organization is doing, and they get to stretch themselves because they get to solve problems in an area that they're not necessarily familiar with. All right, so let's talk about rewards. Last facet. So rewards are, performance rewards, compensation, benefits, recognition. You know what rewards are. We don't need to spend a ton of time on that. So here are some ideas. Ask your employees how they want it to be rewarded. So a lot of times organizations develop ideas for rewarding employees, and they forgot to find out if employees care about that or not. So ask your employees, what is it that you're looking for? In fact, I'm doing a whole performance management revamp for a client right now, and one problem was their job descriptions are just kind of way out of date. The last person who did them was way too detail oriented. All of the job descriptions are 5 pages long. It's kind of a mess I have to sift through. Well, so I had everybody do job diaries a couple weeks ago, and on the job diary, I also asked them to fill out some questions at the end. And one of the questions was, what motivates you? And I gave them a list of options and then asked them, is there anything else? So that now as I create the performance system, can give people the rewards that they want, that they care about. And so I was able to get that information as I asked them to do their work logs. Make sure there's a connection between goals, performance, and the rewards. So if the organization has certain goals, let's say the organization's goal is to increase sales by 10%, all of the sales team has to understand how they play a role in achieving that 10%, and then the rewards attached to that performance has to be clear so that there's a line that you can connect the dots between the organization's goals, people's personal goals or job goals and performance, and then their reward. So the more you can do that, the more engaged people are because they care about the reward. Use an example of employees to highlight excellence. So let's say an employee does something really amazing for a customer. Advertise that. Show people in your organization, this is what exemplary customer service looks like. So now people can learn from that person's work, and also that person gets rewarded by being acknowledged as here's an excellent example. Provide advancement, and it doesn't have to be a promotion that you're providing. Advancement could be a little more work or taking on more responsibility that's key to the organization's success, or being a lead, so they're not necessarily a supervisor or manager, but that people can come to them with questions, so they can kind of be an internal trainer inside that department. So you can give people more important work as a way to reward them. It doesn't always necessarily have to be a title change. Create a wall of great ideas. So we had the wall of successes, but we could also have a wall of great ideas. So people could just sort of slap their crazy ideas up on this wall, and then that gives managers and the leadership team something to work with. In Qualcomm, which is obviously a huge multi-bazillion-dollar company, if you go into one of the big rooms on their campus, one of the lobbies in one of their buildings, every patent they've ever gotten is on the wall. And so from floor to ceiling around this entire room, every patent they've ever gotten is there. And so I think of that when I think of this idea. You may not be getting patents, but you could certainly floor to ceiling celebrate great ideas that people have implemented that have made your organization better. Use social media to recognize your employees. So if you have a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page, when employees do something great, use your social media to talk about it and celebrate employees publicly like that. And idea number 50, one thing that might be kind of fun and cheap is to take out an ad in your local newspaper. Everybody loves their 15 minutes of fame, so you could just take out a little quarter-page ad or an eighth-page ad in your newspaper and make sure your employee sees it, but that might be a fun way to celebrate your employees. Now, I do have one final idea, so there's actually 51, and that last idea is to create a strategic plan. So all of these ideas, or 99% of these ideas, are small ideas that don't take a lot of time or money, that if you implemented most of them, you definitely would start to see a change in your employee engagement. And so you could just kind of go and start implementing things randomly, but of course if you do it through kind of a plan, then you can sort of measure your success and take that to your CEO at some point in the future and say, hey, I've been doing these little minor employee engagement initiatives and they've really been making a difference. Can we do a bigger initiative and create a real full-on employee engagement program? And if you have some data, your CEO is going to definitely back that idea a lot more favorably than if you don't have data. So if you want to email me, I can send you a template strategic plan that is broken down into these 7 facets we've talked about. It's a simple plan, but it's a good place to start. And again, you can email me if you want the professionalism job aid to help your managers have that conversation with their employees. So with all that said, I just wanted to add one thing. You know, millennials are obviously taking over the workplace, and millennials, you probably know this already, millennials, um, one of their key factors is that they have to feel like they are really impactful. That's just a huge part of how they think, that they have to feel like they have a huge impact on the world around them. And I'm not stereotyping, just in general, that's what we've been seeing with millennials. So engagement's going to be really key. Also, one thing with millennials is they're going to be leaving jobs a lot more often than maybe our older workforce. So, you know, the more engaged you can keep them, the longer you can keep them there in your workplace. So these ideas are absolutely going to make a big difference for your millennials. So you might be thinking, where do I begin? That was a whole bunch of information I got. What do I do now? You know what? You might just be right here, and that's okay. Just take one small step. Choose one thing that I talked about today, implement it today, see how the reaction goes, and then go from there. So as Jennifer said, you're going to get the slides, so you'll have all 51 ideas there to look at, and hopefully I've been able to offer up some great ideas for you. Just take one small step, see how it goes, and go from there, and that's how you begin. So with that, I'll put up my contact information, and Jennifer, I'll open it up for questions.
Catherine, thank you so much. And I'm going to tell you, people were really engaged in your presentation today. I really only have a few questions, and I know we're past the 2 o'clock mark, so let's see if we can get them in quickly. The first one says, do you have any suggestions for companies that employ contractors that work in different locations all over the country? We currently have a newsletter, company intranet, kudos, and recognitions, but I guess you would like suggestions beyond that.
Ooh, I've never gotten that question before. I don't see why you couldn't still implement a lot of the ideas that I've offered up today, but what I'd ask is I need to sit on that a little bit because I've literally never gotten that question before. Could you send me an email with that question, whoever asked it, and I promise I will respond later today after I've had a little time to mull over it. But my answer right now is I really think you could still use a lot of what I've talked about today. You know, find out from those contractors what do they find value in terms of rewards, and make sure you're giving them the rewards that they find value in. You know, figuring out ways for them to come together as a team, even though they're contractors. But let me mull over that a little, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, and this one's interesting. Let's get through this one, and then I think we'll wrap up. At the beginning, you mentioned employees graffitiing success on paper on the wall. What if people take advantage and use the paper for bad, like writing negative things about each other? What do you do then?
You know what? I think you make an announcement that that wall is meant for good only, and that if you figure out, you know, who's writing the negative stuff, that you're going to need to have a conversation with them. You might also include in your announcement that the point of that wall is to create a more positive work environment. Whoever wrote the negative comments obviously feels like there's a negative work environment, and that they are part of the problem if they are, you know, sort of pushing forward this negative work environment, and here you are trying to tip the scales, and that you're really asking everyone to tip the scales with you by participating in that positive wall. But honestly, I really don't see that happening, and I've done that wall with a lot of organizations that I've worked with, and I've never seen that happen. So I think you'll be safe, and you know, put faith in your employees that they'll participate in a positive way.
Okay. Catherine, we have questions coming in. Are you okay to continue for a few more minutes?
Sure, I'm okay.
Okay. What if there are employees who are just not motivated or can't seem to get it? Is it time to move on and terminate them, assuming that they've been spoken to already?
I have a couple answers to that. First off, make sure that your manager is having those conversations in the right way. So, you know, the employee needs to have that understanding of how their tasks are connected to the mission. Is your manager having that, or is that person's manager having that conversation with them? I would guess maybe not. That's not something a manager would instinctually think to have a conversation about. So that's step number one. How are those conversations looking from the manager's side? Are they talking about connection to the mission? Are they talking in a way that's respectful and collaborative, or are they kind of talking down, I'm fixing your work problem kind of a conversation? So that's step number one. From there, if it seems like the manager is doing all of those things right and is having a collaborative conversation about performance and it's not changing, then yes, I would start going down that path. I just have a real strong opinion that you have a certain kind of culture that you need to maintain, and negative people drag other people down and they don't need to be there. So yes, I would start taking them down that disciplinary path, obviously giving them goals. You know, you have to change XYZ by this date, and if you don't, then you're going to get a disciplinary warning and so forth. So giving them real goals to try to achieve as you go through that.
Okay, our next question is, we've been doing a lot of these items, and it seems the more we do, the more the morale continues to decline. Have you had that before, and do you have any suggestions?
I have not seen that before, no. So this would be one where we could probably have a full offline conversation about this, where I could give you more advice, but just with what little I know about what you just said, it may be that as you've implemented these things, the negative Nancy's who feel like their social power is being taken, they might be the reason it's going more negative. So what you've done by implementing engagement initiatives is said, we're changing the way things are done around here, and you have to be okay with that. And there's going to be people who are not okay with that, and they might be the ones who are, causing those problems and making it seem worse. So you need to figure out where it's coming from that it's getting worse. Is it a few key people? Is it just everyone? 100% of people are acting out even more than they were before. So that's part of the equation. The other part is anytime you make a kind of a big change where you're saying we're going to change our culture, or this is a big company-wide initiative, people don't like change, even when it's good change. Most people don't like it, and it makes them uncomfortable because they don't know what it means for them. So it may also be that you've forgotten a step and you forgot to train your managers how to manage change. And so your managers may not know how to deal with that dissension, and how they deal with it is to talk about it. So your managers should be having those free conversations with their departments. Hey, we're trying to implement engagement. People seem unhappy about that. Why? And let people talk about why they're unhappy with it, and then you can fix that. So it may be that people feel that they don't have enough time. One more thing I have to do. I'm already so busy. Now you want me to have a meeting about engagement? I don't want to do that, So there's a lot of different reasons that could happen that I can help you work through offline. And so give me a call or shoot me an email and we can talk more about that. But hopefully that helps a little bit.
Well, and Catherine, speaking of not having enough time, we're looking at 2:15 here, and I know some folks are getting pressed for time, so we're going to wrap it up. We do have a few more questions in the queue that we'll make sure get to you, and I know you will answer those offline. And I
Absolutely.
also want to let everybody know that we are going to email you the continuing education numbers that you need to get your credits for both SHRM and HRCI. So watch your email. You'll get those credit numbers, and you will also get a full copy of all the slides and a recorded copy of the entire presentation. And with that, Catherine, I can't thank you enough. It is a wonderful presentation, and it was great having you here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Gladstone, and on behalf of EBI, have a great day, everyone.